Hello, Alan Ryder, Southeastern Railway Museum, and welcome to our winter update on our former Southern Railway SW7 switch engine 8202. We've been steadily making progress, knocking out little things here and there and some big things. So we will move on and enjoy the video. When we installed the batteries in 8202, you can see that in the last video, we had to borrow the battery lifter from another organization. We really need to have our own, so one of our fellows drew a drawing of that lifter, which is what you see there. And now I'm in the process of making another lifter for ourselves. I already cut the plates out. The big key with the battery lifter is the plates. I already cut them out and used a torch to bend this one. Now I've got the second plate in position, so I'll be heating that and bending it over to make the second hook. So here's the finished product on our crane. Plates are nicely painted, so somebody who sees it will know it's, hey, this is important, we don't want to throw it away. Trim the corners. Got some straps and shackles. It didn't cost a whole lot of money. Put a spreader on, and there it is. So here it is doing its job. You can see how it hooks onto the bottom of the battery. And you may ask, well, why did we go ahead and make one when we've got the batteries installed on the locomotive? And the simple question is, we've got 8 scrap batteries we've got to get rid of, so we're going to have to figure out some way to load them, and we'll use the lifter for that. There is a person under there, that's Mike. He's capping off the air lines to the intermediate sanders. We really only need the sanders on the front and the rear. We don't need the ones in between, so he's capping off the air lines. This locomotive was originally equipped with MU only on the cab end. That was fairly common on these older switchers. It's an unusual MU setup compared to modern receptacles or modern systems in that it has 16 pins, so it's not really compatible with modern locomotives. And some point in the past, someone removed the wiring to the MU receptacles. So, that would have been fine, except how they did it. So rather than remove it properly, all they did was to cut off the wiring on the outside of the locomotive,
pull the loose ends back through until they're underneath the cab floor, which is what you're looking at now, and just laid the wires there. They taped up the ends, but loose wires that are energized are just not a good idea. You know, a little bit of moisture or somebody stepping on them, which we're going to do because it's a place where you have to work, is an invitation for trouble. So we had to get this corrected. So this wiring goes to this piece of conduit across the cab floor or under the cab floor and into the electrical cabinet and to a terminal board on the other side. So here's that terminal board on the back of the electrical cabinet. It's the one on the left. And so what I did with the help of Nick, one of our regular volunteers, is tugged and pulled and made sure each wire was correct and then disconnected them from the terminal board. Fairly straightforward process. So now that they're all disconnected, I'll just cut all these loose ends off and pull it back through the conduit just to make things tidy. So that will be the next process. The more you pull out, the easier it gets. So that's the bundle. They're all disconnected and pulled out of the conduit. So that's one less liability to worry about. And some copper for the scrap man. We have a bit of an air leak on this S contactor. That's the middle of these contactors. These are electro-pneumatic contactors. So that magnet valve energizes. There's a small vent hole between the bottom of the coil and the top of the contact block. Don't know if you can see it real well, but it appears that's where the air is coming from. So we'll take this thing apart and see what we can find out. So I've never taken one of these apart, but I suspect that if it's like the newer ones, a big nut on the bottom, take it off, and that should get us to the internal guts. We'll find out. So I got the bottom off, and it looks like I got to take the top off too. So that's the top right there, and there's this big nut here that holds the coil on. So get that off. That's probably will take the coil off. And now two big flathead screws. Fortunately, they both broke loose. So here it is in pieces, and I didn't find anything obviously wrong with it. That little bitty piece right there is the pilot, and it seats in the bottom of the magnet valve. There don't appear to be any rubber seals or anything. And then it pushes this thing up when the magnet valve pushes this down and unseats the little doolally and allows air to come up and operate the contactor cylinder. Can't find anything obviously wrong other than it being dirty, so I cleaned it up. I'm going to put it back together, and not optimistic, but who knows. After cleaning and reassembling this magnet valve, I went home and dug up the maintenance instructions from EMD on this magnet valve, and I have to thank Dale Grice, one of our former volunteers. He had an extensive collection of EMD maintenance information and other things, and he shared those with me. So took a look at this. This is a very old design. It was probably designed in the 1930s. Probably is on FTs and the oldest diesel locomotives EMD built. The latest revision date of those instructions is like 1953. But anyway, as I suspected, this magnet valve does not have any rubber seals or O-rings. At that era, the technology just wasn't there for good O-rings and good seal quality. So In fact, well, you may not be able to see it, the little thingamabob I was calling it is a needle valve at the bottom, and it does have a lapped connection to the seat, and then there's an upper plunger that also is lapped. So I cleaned them. I don't know how well they'll seal. They seem to do okay, at least the bottom one, on shop air. I'm going to put it back on and see if it works. If it doesn't leak, we're good. If it does leak, I can take it apart. Not quite as much as before. Lap the seals, lap the seats, and get it good. And in fact, it does leak. It's not nearly as bad in the de-energized position, but when you energize it, not so good. So we'll go ahead and lap it. Okay, that's the needle valve. That's what they call the lower seat. So this is closed when the magnet valve is de-energized, and I've got lapping compound on it. That's this. Put a little bit more on, and we'll drop it back in like that. And we'll put our screwdriver on it. They conveniently put a slot in for this very purpose, and we lap it in. Again, this is the one that's pretty good. The one on the other side is not. Okay, that's the upper plunger, and it goes in here, and when the magnet valve is energized, pushes this flapper down and connects the lower to upper. And so this is the one that's leaking the most, so we'll put a little bit of compound on it, stick it in here, and it has a square head, so that makes it a little bit more challenging to turn, but it'll work. And I can feel the difference. You can feel it grinding. So we'll be doing this for a few minutes. So it's all back together. Still leaks a little bit, but there's a good expression about don't let perfection get in the way of getting it done. And that's how I feel about it. Got a lot of other fish to fry. Give it a good test. I even energized it with real electricity. Like that. So there we go. The amusing thing is I checked the other two contactors, which are the P contactors. They come in if the locomotive makes transition, which would happen about 15 or 20 miles an hour. And neither one of them work. They're completely jammed. So I'm not going to worry about that, because the probability that this locomotive will ever get up to that speed under its own power is minute. And again, there's bigger fish to fry. So all is good. Or all is pretty good. This is the air compressor control magnet valve. It's a standard magnet valve. That's the bottom of it. It's still used on modern locomotives, so it's a pretty straightforward item. I took it apart and cleaned it. Probably should have videoed it, but I didn't. So what I'm going to show you is the process for making a gasket. The gasket was shot. We probably have one buried somewhere, but it's just as easy to make one. So I already made a hole in the gasket, so I already started the process. So this is the magnet valve body, and the trick is, first I'm going to do the mounting holes. So just take a ball peen hammer, try to the best you can, and sometimes you can do it with your fingers. Find where the hole is and just start tapping around the edge of the hole.
So the cloth is to protect the edges.
No. So I put the bolts in to keep the gasket material in the right place. There's two little holes in the middle, so already found one. Wasn't quite where I needed to be, that's why it wasn't lining up very well. Now it is. You see the depression? There we have the other two holes, so all I got to do is take it off. I'll lay it the other way, take a knife and cut around the edges. Not as pretty as it could be, but it should do the job. Just like that. Put the magnet valve back together. That's all there is to it. And magnet valve reinstalled. This front cab door on this locomotive was in pretty bad shape. The door was structurally fine, but the hinges had been sprung. The door handle was missing, and the door strike was pretty much messed up. So we ended up taking the door off to cut the hinges off and replace the hinges and replace the latch assembly. We replaced the strike. It was convenient that this window was broken, so we just took the window out and used the crane to handle the door to take it off, and also to put it back in place, which is a little bit more of a challenge, but we got it all done. Works fine now. We'll have a few vignettes of some of the work we did on this, because it was kind of an off and on project. So all is good. Everyone's busy today. Nick H is cleaning up the hinge where the hinges used to be on the front door. We decided to take the door off. We're going to replace the hinges. So he's busy doing that. Cab door handle assembly is repaired and replaced, reinstalled and fully operational. Thank you to Ryan. He's a very good scrounger. And he found a similar latch that had a good handle on it. So I took the handle off of that latch assembly, put it on this one. It was a little bit of a challenge because the handle is staked with a roll pin, so it was a little bit difficult to get it out, but we did. And Ryan even found an outside handle, so we got everything put together and doing good. And these are the new hinges that we installed. Nick did a nice job of welding these things in. The door strike on this
front door had deteriorated to the point where it really wasn't doing a lot. It was very loose. So we've cut it off, and Randy's in the process of fabricating a new strike to be welded on right there where those yellow marks are. So I turned the light off so you can see the nice daylight gap there. And what that tells me is that this locomotive at some point had its cab smacked pretty hard, and the cab's not straight. Which is not too surprising, since this old girl had a rough life like all older locomotives do, or all locomotives. It doesn't have anything to do with their age. So we'll either live with it, we might move the weather stripping out a bit, but we certainly aren't going to try to remount the door. It wouldn't do any good anyway. These two windows on our switch engine were broken and needed to be replaced, and I wasn't involved in that process. Some of the other guys took care of it, and the technique they used, it's a fairly common technique, but you take the gasket material and you wrap it around the glass, and then you use a piece of like clothesline cord, about 1/4-inch cord, put that in the slot inside the gasket, wrap it around, press the glass up against the window frame, and then from the inside you use the rope to pull the gasket material out around the frame. It's a fairly common technique. I'll post a link to a video or two about how these folks do this on antique automobiles. Well, that's about it for this update. Got a lot done, got a fair bit more to go. So stay tuned for the next update, which, crossing our fingers, might be the last one. We're hoping. As always, thank you very much for watching, and thanks to all the other folks involved in this project. I can't do it by myself. So enjoy, and if you happen to have a chance to be out in the Atlanta, Duluth area, come visit us. We got a lot of interesting stuff to see. Thank you very much.